Hello, this is Giancarlo, and this is the second part of a four-part video series. In this particular part, I'll be going through Investigation 1, where we look at table of values. And in the context of this lesson, where I'm helping students identify the difference between a linear and a nonlinear relation by looking at a table of values, algebraic equation, or a graph. Now, what I'll be making use of, as you can see, is notebook software. You'll also see me using the Centio student response system, but also make reference to SmartSync, which is classroom management software. So let's get into it. I already went through the introduction and in a previous video that you might have watched, and now I'm ready to do the first investigation, which is using a table of values to identify the difference between a linear and a nonlinear relation. What I always do is I start off by doing some vocabulary, so going through some of the words that they're going to be seeing in this lesson. Now, for this particular investigation, they need to know what a first difference is, and what I'll do is I'll demonstrate for them how to actually calculate the first difference. Now, what you might want to do, and what I usually do, is I'll make use of my page recording feature. So I'm going to record myself going through an example of calculating the first difference. And the reason why I do this is because later on I'm going to have students calculate first differences themselves. And there we go. And instead of having to go through multiple examples, students can then use this playback feature to see how I calculated those first differences. I'll do the same to calculate the x differences on this table of values. And now I'll actually start my investigation. Now the way I set up this investigation is I actually have this hidden, so the students actually don't see that whole part. And I tell them that what I'm going to do is I'm going to be sending them a file that's going to have a bunch of table of values graphs that they're going to be working from, and I'll show you what that looks like. So here's the file, and this is where I make use of the SmartSync. So I'll actually push this file to all the students, and I'll actually be broadcasting this to them so that they're just watching for instructions before they actually can manipulate. And what I'm going to get them to do from each file, as it states there, from each page, is they're going to be using what they learned in terms of calculating x differences and first differences, and they'll be finding the x differences and first differences. They can use a calculator if necessary. And then they're going to be taking out this little tab that'll tell them whether or not this relationship is linear or not. And so what you'll see on these subsequent pages is various other tables of values where they're going to be calculating x differences and first differences. And what I'd have them do right now is actually work through these different tables of values and then wait for my instructions. And as that's happening, so as students are working together, and I can also, if I have SmartSync, use the collaboration tool. So I can, which if you're not sure what it is, it randomly groups students into groups where they'll be working together on a particular file that you sent them, in this case, this particular file. And in the meantime, as students are working through that, I'll invite students to come up to the board to fill in this example. So as you see here, I had students already fill in these tables of values, the x differences and y differences. Once all the students have finished their files, and I have students that have come up and filled in these tables of values on the board, I'm going to pull down this drop down, and I'm going to invite students to, in their groups, discuss how they think they'd be identify the type of relationship just by looking at the table of values. So these are the table of values that appear in their worksheet. I want them to go through those tables of values and look to see the type of relationship, and I want them to see if they can make a connection. In other words, if I just given them this table of values here, just by using the information from this table of values, how would they be able to identify that it was a linear relation? And so I'd give them some time to discuss and to conjecture what they think it would be, and then I'd probably enter into a group discussion to see what the class as a group can agree on. And then I'll throw them an additional example. And this example also appears in their file, so I will instruct them to go to the next example, and here's the example there. And what's interesting about this example is most students would go ahead and calculate the first differences, and they'll notice that these first differences are all the same. But what I've noticed over the years is that most students always forget to calculate the x differences, in which case these x differences are not the same. And so students would automatically, the majority of students would agree that this relationship is linear. And what I'd probably do here is make use of my CENTIO. And what I do is I'd insert a yes/no question. And the question that I would ask in this case, and maybe I want to do a quick question, so I'm going to just hold the icon. Let me show you how to do it a little bit quicker. So there's a drop down menu here, and I'm just going to go and do an instant yes or no, and it's going to set up a question on the next page. And what I'm going to ask is this